You got me back there, Mr. D? Good? All right. Well, we are, can you guess where we are this morning? Oh, yeah. Yeah, this too is historical. Um, now, this morning I mentioned it's kind of a historical day at Crieve. I mentioned that in the welcome at the 8:15. And I know what's going to happen. It's going to go from being historical to next week being hysterical, as there are people that will be here at 8:15. And or I told Don Spicer, who gets here early on Sundays, I said, Don, I know that you're here at 7 or 7:15 or whatever every Sunday. I said, you really don't need to be here at 7 next week. Please, you want me to text you Saturday night and remind you that we're meeting at 9? He said that might be helpful. So, but we're excited about that. Remember, next week, 10:15 for class. 10:15. If you're something occurs, you can say, well, I can still get there for class. So 10:15. We're in chapter 6 and 7 today of Ecclesiastes. We took a couple of weeks in chapter 5. I want to do something a little different this morning in terms of format by choice here, and somewhat by choice, but driven, for me, it was driven to this choice based on what's in chapter 6, just how it's written. So how it was written, I wanted to go to this format. We'll do a little different when we hit chapter 7. My goal today is to go ahead and get into chapter 7, but that depends on you, and that's fine on your particular thoughts. What I mean by that is we're going to read and discuss a little more rather than certain sections by section. It will be, I'm going to highlight some things that came to my mind in individual verses, but I'd like to hear from you as we get into chapter 6, okay? As we get into chapter 6, there is, and it's just a chapter of futility, okay? And I could say, stop me if you've heard that before, right? That's Ecclesiastes. But there is a futility, reminder of futility throughout this chapter, rather than this set of verses is the futility of certain things, and then the next section moves on to something else. This whole chapter is a chapter of futility. And if you would allow it to be, it'd be sort of a downer chapter, could be. If somebody just opened Ecclesiastes, hadn't read the first few chapters, hadn't read anything below, hadn't heard many sermons, if any, from Ecclesiastes and its general principles, and I'm going to read the chapter that I open up, eyes closed, and put my finger on, and they read chapter 6, they could be like, okay, I'll never get that amount of time back again, that kind of thing. But we need to talk about why that's not the case, okay? Verse 1, there is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that he lacks nothing for himself of all he desires, yet God does not give him power to eat of it. But a foreigner consumes it. This is vanity, and it is an evil affliction. If a man begets 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with goodness, or indeed he has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better than he. Now let's pause right there. I pause right there because of how chapter or verse 3 ends, what it says there, especially toward the close, to just start with this principle. There's some strong language right here. If somebody was writing you this letter as a letter, and you're reading it, you have no idea what is to come, and early on in this letter to you, they reference what's in verse 3, not just what's in it, but how it is given, especially, again, at the close. A stillborn child, better than he. You sort of probably be caught by that. Maybe a little taken back. That's a little abrupt. That's a little strong, however you want to put it. Didn't see that coming. somebody might say. Strong language to start chapter 6. I want to pause and get you to look again at it now that we've read it. I want you to look at verse 1 and 2. And if you've got something that comes to mind, say it. That comes out of verse 1 and 2. And then I just want to mention something myself out of verse 3. But the first two verses, look at that, scan it again. It may come from a translation difference that you have a different word or phrase that would be good for us to focus on. Anything out of verse 1 and 2? Okay, she uses the term odd, and I think that's true. A man to whom God has given, let's read it again. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that he lacks nothing for himself and all he desires, yet God does not give him power to eat of it, but a foreigner consumes it. This is vanity, and it is an evil affliction. Okay, Hannah? Enjoys.
He gives wealth and possessions and honor, but not the capabilities to enjoy them, but a stranger.
Yeah.
That seems.
Does that not seem fair? I mean, you and I are in a society, I think we have been for a while, and we may, I don't know, maybe we will be forever. I don't know, but it's sort of caught up in, and listen, I appreciate my rights as a citizen of this country, but I do think we are kind of eaten up in another way. We're kind of eaten up with our rights. And we're also kind of eaten up with the concept of fairness sometimes. We're just kind of eaten up. That's not fair. And the definition of not fair to too many is that doesn't benefit me directly. that becomes the definition of fairness. The definition of fairness is, how does it affect me? Well, it may not be fair, and it may affect me negatively, but that's not the basis for whether it's fair. Is what I'm saying there. Exactly.
I'm thankful that Jesus didn't think about his rights and how his fairness.
Sure. Do I really want from to pray to my God that He will give me what is fair? In that regard. Anything that is it's an odd verse to start the chapter. Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 2. David.
I think the problem is that man becomes focused on obtaining the wealth, possessions, and honor. And then once you have them, what's your goal in life?
Yeah. I'll just go ahead and give this now, just because of David's comment. The story is told, and as I first read it, it's told as a true story. I'm assuming this is true. In fact, the main reason right now I'm telling you that I believe it's a true story is because, if I remember it correctly, a man was referenced there from England back where this and when this took place. So a young man came to him, and he said, and I think I mentioned this earlier in one of the earlier chapters for a different purpose. Man who wanted to kind of be his protege, had this deep respect for him and what he had been, who he is. He comes to him and he says, "Okay, well, tell me your plans." Kind of gives him a "tell me your plans" type of question to begin. He says, "Well, I think I'll this, and I'm probably going." And the young man, is starting off being viewed as a young man who is on a track. He's on a track, and so an older person looking back is saying, "Good, good." In a lot of aspects, would be saying, "Well, here's a young man who's got a plan. He's serious about it. He knows what he wants, that sort of thing. He's thought about it, that sort of thing, and that's good." But as he keeps saying, "Okay, and what then? And then what then? Okay, well, that's okay. What then? What then?" And he gets all the way to the end of his time, of his assumed years of life, and his assumed what comes next. And he goes, "Well, I guess then I'll die." and this man to whom he had so much respect, about whom he had so much respect, kind of hit him square between the eyes. He said, young man, you're a fool. Now, why did he tell him he was a fool? Because he had given no thought. And eventually, you ask, what then? Okay, and what then? And what then? You ask that a number of times, and somebody gets down that far, and they haven't considered, what then? And there's no more of this. It's only, and he said, young man, you're a fool. Go back and reconsider your life. Because he had no thought to the final what then. Well, David's comment referenced man's focus out of verse 2. Man's focus, caught up in this focus. Focus seems good. Focus is good. But Ecclesiastes is driving us to a different focus when he says vanity is vanity all the time. It's not driving us to not be focused. It's driving us to a different focus. And I think that connects sort of Hannah's initial comment of verse 2 and David's as well.
Just from the analogy that you just gave, we often think of the what next without thinking of, or it seems to me, without thinking of what is my legacy? What are these actions that I'm taking and plan to take going to do for my legacy that I have been given? Because everybody has a legacy, it's just what you want to do with it. What have I done with what I've been given, and what am I going to leave? And without planning in that regard, it is vanity. But I think with what you're saying in terms of Ecclesiastes, it's not the daily necessarily, but what is the legacy that it leaves? What are you doing to build? What have you done with what you've been given? Whether it is riches, whether it is just the fact that you have a legacy, you have a name in Christ. What are you going to do with it? And that's in the daily actions. That's often a challenge to go, well, what is this doing to the bigger picture? What is this going to ultimately say about me, my efforts for Christ?
What your phrase, what is this doing in the bigger or to or for the bigger picture? That is not to suggest that if anybody had planned, let's say it was different weather. Beautiful today, but it's winter, right? Let's say this was springtime or fall or whatever instead, and so it was a little warmer. And somebody in here had a tea time tomorrow morning. And you're going to play 18. You're not playing 9, you're going to play 18. So you're going to be out there for probably 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours. Depending on how good a golfer you are, I guess. You're going to be out. That's not to say that's a wasted day in terms of an immoral day in the account of stewardship. I mean, Don's probably, I guarantee you, it's either A, not been too long since, or it won't be long till. One or the other. Don's going to go shoot some ducks sometime. Has it been a long time? He did, but you heard him say unfortunately. When Don's out in a duck blind, is this a man who just doesn't care about his legacy? He doesn't care about stewardship of his time? He doesn't care? No, that's not. That's not. Should not be the assumption coming out of this focus of the brevity of life and the futility of life but we do have to take in what is this going to do towards. The word towards means there's something down there. Right? Moving towards. Towards is important. Away, not good. Towards. What is this going to do towards? Look at verse 3. The soul is what needs satisfying. You see that there? If a man begets 100 children and he lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with goodness, or indeed he has no burial, I would say that a stillborn child is better than he. I talked about how strong that was when we opened with it a few minutes ago. How strong this is. The soul, that's an emphasis. that the soul is what needs satisfying. There is my pursuit. My pursuit is there. In the middle of the verse, it talks about what he's got. Oh, he's got this, we're talking about legacy. He's got 100 children. And he's got the legacy of a good long life. Okay, I've known a few people that had that exact combination. You probably have too. If not yet, you will. Good long life and a wonderful legacy in terms of family. The soul is not satisfied. There's a focus of a reminder for that in verse 3. Verse 4, for if it comes in vanity and departs in darkness, and his name is covered with darkness, though he has not seen the sun or known anything, this has more rest than that man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice, but has not seen goodness, do not all go to one place? There are periodic references in our nation, and I'm sure this would be true in any nation in terms of its leaders. Talking about the word legacy, but I can remember the reference to a couple of specific presidents of more modern times, just in general, over the lifespan of the country, that were obsessed, they say, those that were closest to them, obsessed with their legacy. Obsessed with their legacy. Well, I'm assuming when someone's referencing the obsession with a legacy, that could reach what point? Now, there's good, Hannah's referencing, it's good to say, what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with it? That's good. But then there's an obsession with one's legacy. Could that potentially become something not so good? Well, sure. Have we ever seen that? Sure. I'm going to make a name for myself. Is that inherently wrong? Well, for what? And by the way, for myself. Think about that. Verses 4 through 6 are the ones we just read. 4 kind of finishes out verse 3, of course. But you might even take in verse 3 again. Go through verse 6 and tell me what you think. I can tell by you being deep in thought it's going to be good when you come out with something.
Question, it's not really in it, but what is the significance of saying that he has no burial in 3?
Okay, let's go back to the beginning of verse 3. If a man begets 100 children, lives many years. All right, so why does he begin with this idea? Well, that's one kind of potential marking point for somebody that's things have gone well for. Okay, that he's going to, well, let's say this. So he starts off with something that could be viewed as wonderful. Yeah, so he does that. So he's got a lot of children, lives many years. Check, check. So that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with goodness. Something's lacking. His soul is not satisfied with goodness. Or indeed, he has no burial. I say that a stillborn child is better than he. Indeed, he has no burial. I'm glad that you brought that up. Because last night, as I revisited this, I kind of thought, why is that there? Does anybody have a phrase? Let me start with that. Does anybody have a phrase different than has no burial? Not a proper burial? What else? Anybody have anything else? Is the word burial across the room? Anybody have anything other than the word burial? What's that signify?
No big fancy tombstone.
Okay.
No big notoriety as
Okay. Uh, it's a marker for something, right? Could be a marker for legacy. It's a marker, denotes something or connotes something.
This might not be right, but I'm thinking, doesn't deserve the respect of a proper burial.
Okay.
No one
No one
to mourn him.
to mourn him.
Especially considering it said he had 100 children.
Yeah. That's interesting. Right before that. Lynn, did you?
That's exactly right.
Okay. I thought you looked like you were referencing something.
Didn't have anyone that loved him enough or mourned him enough to honor him with a burial.
You know who's in this room today that we should hear from? Dan Winkler is in this room today. Brother Dan, as you read the issue of indeed he has no burial, do you have any particular thoughts at the close of verse 3?
I just think that in light of the entire paragraph and what's being discussed in the entire paragraph, as in the entire book, is how vain life is with viewed just as life. If you don't see it in light of, okay, we're here to glorify God. We're here to use our life for God. But if we're here and all we do is just use life, then there's nothing to our lives. And in this context, he's blessed beyond measure, but he's truly not blessed because he's not been a blessing. And so that's how I would like it. I love what Lynn had to say. No one is around to give him an honorable burial because he's lived his life for himself, even though he had all these children. He didn't enjoy the good things. And isn't it true that when you have a lot of good things, you're never satisfied because there's already more good things you're wanting?
By the way, Satan works in many ways, by the way. One is in whetting an appetite, right? I've had a little taste of this. I'm going to use an example here that frankly, don't know if I've used in here before. But I'm going to shorten it down for the sake of time, just to tell you that many years ago, in fact, I was in high school at the time, senior in high school. Our home was victimized, if you will, not by an intruder in terms of breaking into the home, but by a peeping Tom on my sister. Fast forward to I'll get beyond how he was caught and the initial conversation and all that kind of stuff. There's a fascinating path there. But ultimately, the investigation and the detective that interviewed him, and I have the tape, or had the tape back then. He said, the man said, "I've never done this before." And the detective says, "Yes, you have." And he said, No, really, I've never done anything like this before. I don't know what caused me to do it, so and so and so on. And he said, "No, you have." And what he explained to him as to what his position was, that yes, you have, he said, the first timers are back here. First timers are back here a long way away. They've got binoculars. They're under the cover of whether it's darkness or shrouded in a thicket of woods, something. There's some kind of covered, if not multiple situations. And after a time, the adrenaline, the rush, the adrenaline of this situation, that's not enough. And for somebody to get up and go to the lengths that he went to, which if I describe to you the lengths that he went to ultimately get himself up on a high window ledge and hang there, which could have brought his own demise in a fall. Daylight's already broken, and the lady that lived right behind us is already up, sitting, eating her breakfast at a group of windows right here, even though that's not how we found out who it was. He went to great length. No. You've gotten used to this. That you're not nervous about anything at this point. We might say, you're an old pro. Well, flesh that into this. That he's had a little taste, and now he's driven for more, and he's driven for more. And it's the pursuit of any number of things, and it's likable. Anybody in here not like good things? Or nice things? See, I doubt I could ask that in any room and get a hand. Everybody likes nice things. Anybody like a nice trip, nice vacation? Right? Nice place? A lot of friends, whatever it may be.
Years ago, Brother Earl Dennis taught me a little trick to read the Bible backwards. To look at a passage and start with the last verse and then the next to the last verse and so forth. It's amazing what you miss, and you can see that when you're reading the Bible backwards. If we do that to the book of Ecclesiastes, we come to the end of the book and it says, this is the end of the matter, all has been heard, fear of God, keep his commandments, this is the whole of man. Now you take that and take that major emphasis of the book and read it backwards into the rest of the book, and you come to this paragraph. And this paragraph is actually setting two divergent concepts in front of us. First of all, you have one that he has a lot, but he didn't live a long time to enjoy it. Then you have someone who has a lot and he lived 100 years or even 1,000 years. But the last verse of the paragraph says, we all go to the same place. And the point is this: if you don't realize that you're here to fear God and keep his commandments, whether you live a long life or a short life, whether you're blessed to whatever extent, it means absolutely nothing but vanity of vanity and a striving after the wind. Because we're here for one reason. There's only one purpose for our existence. And we flounder around, we say, we live here to be little Christs, or we live here to seek and save the lost. No. We're here for one reason. Whatever you do, that's pretty all-inclusive. Do all. That's all-inclusive. To the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10:31. That's why we're here. And in this book, you're reading about a man that looked at life, and he failed to see that until the end. And so he reverts back and he says, if you're not living your life to bring God glory, when you live a short life, a long life, however blessed you are, it's absolutely meaningless.
And under the assumption that the man writing is Solomon, add that in. This is somebody who did have it all. No, not even that, he would come back and say. No, not even that. No, not even that. I love first of all, Brother Earl Dennis, great man. Great man. And Miss Pearl. Great couple. And the reading it backwards. On week 1, we went to chapter 12. We didn't review the entirety of the chapter, but we went to chapter 12 with that little capsule. It said, keep this in mind, that this is a comparative. No, not even that. No, not even that. No, not even that. Thank you for that, Brother Dan. Let's see. There you go. It was good for you to be here. Hey, Don.
I was thinking about when you said satisfaction, I think about addiction, what really happens in the chemistry to our brain, and why we're never satisfied on a certain point of addiction. But then also think about what you said earlier, is there anything wrong with having a wealth or whatever? And I thought about Proverbs 16:3, where it says, commit your work to the Lord and his plan will be established.
That reminds me of a comment or of a conversation that was had just before coming into this room. I stopped out here, uh, and Chris Black and I were talking about something else. In that conversation, I said, "What you just said, Chris, reminds me of something my dad used to try to strive with to remind the ones in this particular situation over and over and over and over. And preachers have to do this, and elders have to do this, and sometimes just Christians have to do this. Is this concept, fight this concept of the one of these days. One of these days I'll, especially if it's been somebody that's been maybe prodigal to some degree, away from his people. And it's one of these, and so the conditional here, and the condition seems to always be rooted in some, or often is rooted in some feeling. When I feel like, in one of these days, and whenever they were out, Dad would use it as a verb. They were out there one of these days, and they were out there one of these days, and he would calmly, respectfully, but lovingly feel like he had to say, "No, you won't. No, you won't." Because as long as you are conditional with those things, this idea, the Bible's going to zap, or God's going to zap me with a feeling, and then I'll get to work or get back to work. No, what Scripture teaches is you get to work, and the feeling comes through the work, through the work. We sing to the work, to the work. It's a little bit. I'm stealing carefully, contextual, from. Remember when the lepers were healed, and what's the Scripture say? When they were healed, as they were going, and as they went, they were healed. Back to Don's comment, the last part of your comment. Repeat or as much as you want about your comment there.
My point was being satisfied. Yes, we can be, and there's nothing wrong with having wealth. If what? We commit our work to the Lord, and our plans will be established.
And then your plans are established.
That's the whole point. And I think what's happening here in chapter 6 is God is saying, hey, here's what's happened. If you're so wrapped up in your addiction of being wealthy or addiction of whatever it is, then you're not going to commit your work to establish what God wants you to do. So that's why I was just sitting here thinking about what Proverbs 16:3 says.
Commit your works to the Lord, and then your plans will be established. I thought about that is, look, no. You're going to commit your works to and then think it flows from that, not the other way around. It flows from that. Thank you.
When did that really start? The day that you commit your life to the Lord and you're baptized. And it's like you said, it doesn't. How many times have we heard excuses? Well, my children get out whatever, and they're in college. I have more time to do this. But when I don't have as much work on me, it really starts from the day that you're baptized and you committed your life to the Lord, then you start establishing your plans.
Paul opens Romans 6 this way, right? He's closed out Romans 5 talking about the amazing grace of God. Wherever sin abounded, grace superabounded. God's got plenty of grace. Okay. Well, great. What you just continue in sin that grace may abound, right? Just remember, just take off the chapter 6 above and just let it be a full thought that's continuing here. We just continue in sin that grace may abound. God forbid. What's he say next? The very next thing. How can those of us that what? We supposedly died continue to live any longer therein? It starts, I died to this. I died to self. I died here. I can't continue to live it. You're talking about it starts then. We died. Burial. We died. Opening Romans 6. So that Scripture refers to the newness of life. Newness of life. Look at verses 7 through 9. By the way, out of verse 6, I had to be reminded again, fulfillment. No, not even that. As I said earlier, not in our number of years. Now, it's very natural for me to say I'd like to hope I live a good long life, that sort of thing. What are we thinking of? Well, this is time with my family and time with God's people and time with my friend. And time, I enjoy life. Wonderful. He speaks of enjoying life in Ecclesiastes. We looked at one of those verses last week. But no, not even that, as far as fulfillment. Verses 7 through 9. All the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the soul is not satisfied. For what more has the wise man than the fool? Okay, this is, by the way, verse 8, a reminder of what Brother Dan was mentioning just a moment ago. At the end, same place, same end. Again, verse 8, what more has the wise man than the fool? What does the poor man have? Who knows how to walk before the living? Better is the sight of his eyes than the wandering of desire. This is also vanity and grasping for the wind. Futility, futility, vanity of vanities, striving, chasing, some translations, chasing after the wind. I can't help but think of, probably yours too, but our dog daily, what does he do? At some point, every day, if not multiple times a day, what's he doing? Chasing his tail. Never seen him catch it. Not once. And I don't think I will. I don't think I'll see him catch it. And this is what's here. I'll never see him catch it. I'll never catch it. You'll never catch it. Vanity of vanity, striving, a chasing after the wind. Don't be fooled. And by the way, remember the what then story of just a little bit ago in class? The what then? Don't be fooled. This is it. This is all. This is what it comes to. And it comes to this for the rich man. It comes for the poor man. It comes for the man who lived 100 or even 1,000 years. It comes to those that had the shorter lifespan, X number of children or a much different number of children. Don't be fooled. Whatever one is, verse 10, whatever one is, he has been named already. For it is known that he is man, and he cannot contend with him who is mightier than he, since there are many things that increase vanity. How is man the better? For who knows what is good for man in life, all the days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? Who can tell a man what will happen after him under the sun? Years ago, the elders of this congregation, or Bill or Dan, or it's been several years back, I just can't remember how many years back, so I don't know who came up with it, but an invitation to come speak here in the summer series, and the topic I was given was instant versus delayed gratification. And there's a focus on this, I think has to be a focus on this. For the Christian reading this book, there has to be a focus on this, brought into this consideration, not just chapter 6 and how it's written. And I told you chapter 6 was a little different, and it'll be a little different than we pursue chapter 7. I told you that if you just opened up and put your finger somewhere and said, I start reading here today, you might read chapter 6 and go, well, man, I'm down. Instant versus delayed gratification. The gratification coming in, fear God and keep His commandments. The gratification in understanding, there's gratification in understanding, no, not even that. No, not even that. Because when I get to that point and I can reject that concept for my life, well, if I just get more of this or spend more time that, or if I can reject that, then my soul, my spirit, my pursuit, my mind, my heart is more freed up for something else, which is much more satisfying. And I believe satisfying here, to speak nothing, certainly the life to come. More satisfying here. I I do often reference, and we're out of time, I do often reference that I want us to make sure we, the church, are teaching and preaching and reminding in any way that we can, both each other, but also those outside of Christ that we attempt to who we attempt to talk to, that there's reasons to become a child of God that aren't just the eternal ones. I want to become a Christian to avoid hell. Okay. But is that all that God has given the Christian? Is it all later? Is it all later? I don't believe that. I don't believe it's all later. It's here and now. There are things that are only granted to those in Christ even here. And so the Christian life, the best life to live in terms of full satisfaction and fulfillment now, before we even speak of the life to come. Now, that's where it's rooted, but you understand what I'm saying? And then we've got to say that. We've got to say that. It's not just about the avoidance of punishment. So when I've rejected these ideas as satisfying and fulfilling, I am then more freed up to pursue the thing which Dan and Don both referenced coming out of chapter 12. Okay, next week, chapter 7, and we'll look at that a little differently than we looked at chapter 6. Thank you.